Segregation in South Africa by Michaela Miller. The abstract. South Africa struggles with segregation, but with the National Development Plan, which will reduce poverty and racial inequalities, improve quality of public service, and provide opportunities for the young population, the future of these communities looks brighter. This presentation will go into depth describing the apartheid, what caused and ended it, what acts of segregation still exist today, and how the National Development Plan will help create a brighter future for everyone in South Africa. The history of South Africa. The earliest inhabitants of South Africa were the hunter and gatherers San Bushmen and the pastoral Cocoa Hottentots, who were known as the Cohesion in 1488. For hundreds of years, they both lived on the southern tip of South Africa long before the European seafarers came along. The Europeans, also known as the Dutch, settled in South Africa in 1652. They named what is known as the Cape of Good Hope, or the area of many shipwrecks. These people are also known as the white South Africans. When the European people settled, they introduced guns to this country along with fenced farms which inhibited the migration of animals for hunting. Between the Dutch and the early settlers, the war that lasted 100 years began. Later, they created new communities that involved having schools for children to go to. They ranged from grade school to universities. In 1820, about 4,000 British settlers arrived in South Africa. Many of these people went to the farmlands to help raise crops, while others went to the cities. At the end of the 1900s, another war broke out between the British and the Boers, who were able to secure their independence of their republic's free state and the Transvaal after defeating the British Alma Juba. The outbreak of the Anglo-Boer War started in 1899 at Tulana Hill. This war lasted until 1902, when the Boers were defeated. The Union of South Africa was formed in 1910, and although they had made things equal between the blacks and the whites, 2 years later, the blacks joined together to form the South African Native National Congress. This same Congress is now called the African National Congress, which was changed in 1923. The apartheid. The apartheid is a policy or system of segregation or discrimination on grounds of race. It was a political and social system in South Africa while it was under the white minority. Racial segregation has been used for centuries, but when the new policy started in 1948, it was strict and more systematic. This was referred to as the political system where people were divided upon race, gender, or class, along with many other components. The white Africans were considered to be superior over the people of other races as well, strictly due to their skin color. The strategists of the National Party invented the apartheid to cement their control over the economic and social systems. In other words, this is what started the apartheid. Originally, it was to maintain white domination while extending racial separation. Racial discrimination was institutionalized in 1948 with the enactment of the apartheid laws. These laws ran people's lives. There was a prohibition of marriages between non-whites and whites. There were white-only jobs, and people were classified as white, black, or colored, which is a mixed descent of any race. These classifications were based upon their appearance, social acceptance, and their descent. The Boer Wars. English domination of the Dutch descendants, known as Boers or Afrikaners, resulted in the Dutch establishing the new colonies of Orange Free State and Transvaal. In 1990, the discovery of diamonds were made, which led to the Boer Wars. This was also another cause of the apartheid. In the 1940s, the Afrikaners National Party was able to gain a strong majority. This was again to gain official control over the economic and social system. Segregation. Segregation still occurs today in South Africa, but also in many other places around the world as well. There was a news article that showed a classroom in Northwest Province, Africa, where there were 17 children, 5 of which were black, and sitting all at one small table in the corner of the room, while the rest of the children sat amongst each other or played together. Was this intentional? Maybe not, but it sure shook the public authorities when it was publicized. And as you can see to the right of the screen, that is the picture of those children being separated. Farm murders. Another topic where we see segregation again is the farm murders. White farmers are being robbed and murdered. They are tortured in their own homes, having their throats slit open, shot, hands tied behind their backs, ropes wrapped around their necks, and holes drilled into their hands and feet. According to the apartheid, only the blacks were allowed to cross the Nile River, were the ones who worked the white farmers' farmland, or if they worked any mines. The event of these farm murders is so common these days that no one even flinches at the sound of a murder anymore. Last year there were only 84 farm murders, which was the lowest in 20 years. Since 1994, there has been 20,000 farm murders, both races. However, not everyone receives a cross or a memorial. There has been a 20% increase in armed attacks since 1912, and it has been believed that these attacks are driven by greed, politics, and racial history. The economic freedom fighters are rising and are still the sources of the farm murders. Their goal is to gain control over the land and redistribute it to the poor and needy. They believe everyone should have access to education, even if they are poor, and they deserve a sensible style of living. The leader of the economic freedom fighters set race against race. He targets white minorities and states they need to get back what the whites have taken from them. But in the end, no one knows the real motive of these hate crimes. The following is a table that shows the differences in blacks and whites in South Africa. This graph, you can see the segregation in the U.S. and Africa. You can see that the U.S. segregation started decreasing in about 1970, whereas in Africa it was after the turn of the century before segregation started to subside. The National Development Plan. The National Development Plan's goals is to end segregation once and for all, to show that at the end of the day we are all human beings and that no one deserves to be discriminated against. Minister Trevor Manuel states that the plan is for a better future, a future where no person lives in poverty, where no one goes hungry, where there is work for all, and a nation united in the vision of our Constitution. This plan is to offer the ability to feel free and comfortable and to fulfill their goals in life. To be able to succeed in whatever your heart desires with hard work and determination. This plan is to eliminate poverty and increase equality. They want people living in South Africa to feel safe and secure in their homeland and to have enough available jobs to provide for their families. The goal is to make short-term goals into long-term standards to help reduce the segregation we still see today. Thank you for listening.